What is going on, IVE Warriors? So Matt D'Avella tries intermittent fasting 2 years later for 30 days. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Now, if you guys don't know, I did a video on Matt D'Avella's attempt to do intermittent fasting. There was a point where he was doing a lot of videos where he was doing intermittent, or not intermittent fasting, but multiple different practices using a 30-day structure, right? He'll take a cold shower for 30 days. He won't eat carbohydrates for 30 days. And one of the 30-day attempts that he made back in 2019 was intermittent fasting. He tried intermittent fasting for 30 days. And hopefully this video has helped you guys understand that video a little bit better, or like more of a deeper dive to that video, or certain aspects of the video that I needed to touch on so that you could understand what was going on and not take too much out of it, because it doesn't mean that it is negative or positive. It just means that there are certain elements that aren't being fleshed out in that video that could have been fleshed out if he decided to do it in a different way. Now, I did a video on Matt D'Avella back in 2019 when he tried intermittent fasting for 30 days. He didn't do it for 30 days. He gave up very quickly. He was within that phase where you don't feel your energy is it crashes simply because your body is fighting against your want to do intermittent fasting, because you're in a biological rhythm. And that is what I pointed out to Matt D'Avella back in 2019 when I was talking about his attempt to do intermittent fasting. However, he has returned 2 years later to do intermittent fasting. And as the studies suggest, there is always a break-in period that normally lasts 1 to about 2 weeks. He had the same feelings he had the first time around when he was doing a 16-8. Now he's doing 18 hours of fasting as opposed to 16, but he had the same beginning feelings. He felt like his energy was crashing. Then he would eat. He'll feel like he would gain some energy, and then his energy would crash again aggressively right before he went to sleep. So he felt unproductive until about a week and a half or 2 weeks into the intermittent fasting system, where he finally allowed himself to get over that hump where the biological habit is broken and you're in a new rhythm and flow. He no longer had energy plummeting. He no longer had feelings of being tired or unproductive. He felt really good. As a matter of fact, he started to fast past his 18 hours simply by mistake because he was just so within the new rhythm. This is what I tell a lot of people. Some people have tried intermittent fasting for 2 to 3 days or 4 days and just tell people, listen, don't do it. Your energies are going to crash. You're going to feel lethargic. Guys, whenever you're trying to do something new, especially something that's dramatically new in comparison to something you've been doing your entire life, not just your adult life, your entire life, there's going to be a break-in period. There's going to be a transitionary period where you have to get to that point where your body is building a new biological habit. And that's what he did. So kudos to him for trying it again and giving it another shot and actually doing it this time, because that was my biggest critique for him last time, was that the title was incredibly misleading and he never gave himself the opportunity to see any benefit or success from intermittent fasting. Now, a lot of things that he talks about here in relations to intermittent fasting and its comparison to and its connection to calorie restriction, he's simply stating that he feels better doing intermittent fasting because it helps him control his caloric intake. And this is a huge benefit of intermittent fasting. A lot of experts try to diminish this benefit, right? Because before he did intermittent fasting, keep in mind, he was, as he stated in this video, and you can watch it yourself, it's called I Tried Intermittent Fasting for 30 Days. But before he did intermittent fasting, he would he stated that he would drink at night, he would eat at night before he went to sleep, he would snack all the time, and intermittent fasting helped him not do that, because there are things that trigger when you're consistently eating. Ghrelin is constantly going up. Leptin is constantly secreting less, right? You're secreting more ghrelin, less leptin. Leptin is the hormone that tells your brain that you're full. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone that tells you that you're hungry. These things start to kind of align with your goal. And that happens because you are doing intermittent fasting. So people say, hey, look, the only reason intermittent fasting works is not because of intermittent fasting, it's because you're doing intermittent fasting and it's creating a caloric restriction. Yes, that's the point. It's because of intermittent fasting, because there were other diets that people have done. There were other things that people have tried, and it doesn't get them to that position with intermittent fasting. How intermittent fasting gets you there. That invisible wall of not eating actually helps you eat less, actually helps you control how much you're eating. You become very cognizant and very aware of the foods that you're eating. Now, he ended up losing, I believe he said 5 pounds, and he ended up losing a good portion of body fat percentage from his evidence scanner, from his scale. So obviously it's not the most accurate thing, but it shows a difference, a change that went into a positive direction. He's not overweight by any stretch of the imagination, even by looking at him. So obviously, 5 pounds, when you consider a lot of things like glycogen buildup, water retention, and all these different things, could be a really good weight separation from what he was when he first started to what he is when he finished. However, he had such a great time doing it because he got over that initial hump that he is now going to stick to one, but he seems like he's going to connect it to his circadian rhythm. So that means he's going to probably be doing early time restricted feeding, which means he's going to be eating earlier and stopping around 4 to 5 p.m. and then not eating after that. Now, with that being said, there have been so many different studies that show, and I'll give him this he's correct in this assertion when they talk about building muscle. There's a lot of studies show that when it comes to muscle retention and muscle building, intermittent fasting is not the most optimal thing, right? It's not more optimal than having high meal frequency and just doing caloric restriction, because of one of the pillars of protein synthesis is meal frequency, right? And obviously also caloric surplus, but that's going to be pulled from both caloric restriction and intermittent fasting if you're trying to lose weight. But at least the group that has high meal frequency has that pillar over the intermittent fasting group. So when we look at the studies and they show that there's no difference, one thing that you do see a slight difference in is that the caloric restriction group tends to hold on to more muscle. So you have to be very diligent when you're doing intermittent fasting to ensure that you're consuming more protein, ensuring that you're getting 0.7 grams of protein per pound of lean mass, and ensuring that you're getting in your workouts, your exercise, your resistance training. But one thing that we also see that is different between the two, even if not numerically or significantly different, is body fat is always lost more in the intermittent fasting group, even in meta-analysis. And recently, we've seen a meta-analysis that showed a significant loss in body fat, body weight, and belly fat, right? Body composition in the intermittent fasting group over the caloric restriction only group in randomized controlled studies that were synthesized together in a meta-analysis of over 2,500 participants. So the body fat loss is still a benefit that comes from intermittent fasting based off of its process of using fat, partitioning body fat for energy. Since glucose is depleted, ketones replace glucose. Ketones is used, or that energy is derived from the body fat going into the liver. So it's not that it's a magic bullet, right? People say, hey, this is not magic. It's not magic. Caloric restriction. It's not that it's magic. Energy in, calories in versus calories out. Thermogenesis is still applies. It's the calorie partitioning that's a little bit more in favor of body fat reduction with intermittent fasting than just caloric restriction. And we see that across all studies. Even when they say there's no difference, when you look at the actual numbers, it's always the intermittent fasting group, when calories are controlled, losing more body fat than the caloric restriction only group. So there is a difference, just not a numerically significant difference, but 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 pounds of body fat. If you've ever looked up how much 6 pounds of body fat, or what does that look like, it looks significant visually. It looks significant, but that all comes from the body's process of making its own glucose substitute. So you're still, of course, having the same calories in, calories out system, but the calories out is not this consistent drip of glycogen or this high level of just muscle tissue that's breaking down. It's partitioning more body fat because of the way intermittent fasting works. That's not magic. That's what it is. It's like saying when you drink water, you don't die because you're hydrated. Water is creating a magic pill to keep you alive. It's not magic. It's biology. It's science. The same way intermittent fasting, because you're depleting glycogen and you now have to use fatty acids, triglycerides, turn them into ketones to replace the glucose. You're essentially using more fat for just more than just the calorie deficit. You're using it even for glycogen depletion. Therefore, you end up burning more fat than you than normally if you were to just do caloric restriction with the same caloric deficit. So hopefully this video helped. I'm super happy that Matt D'Avella, even though it took 2 years, he came back and actually tried it. Once you really try to do it and you don't just do the 1 week or the 2 weeks or whatever, if you really try to do it, you normally get over that hump. And I've said this so many times, it takes about 2 weeks, but you get over that hump. And that's what we see in studies. Once you get over that hump, your hunger actually reduces, your appetite actually reduces. So anyways, until the next one, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I had to close this circle because I did this video on him last time, and I feel that credit should be given where credit is due. He tried it again. Even if he didn't like it, I still would have given him the credit of actually trying it for real, which is what he did. But hey, he ended up liking it, as a lot of people do when they actually stick to doing intermittent fasting. Anyways, until the next one, guys, peace out.